Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at the current edition of the North Coast Journal. My name is Matt Knight, and I will be your Dave one more week. And as usual, we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and the arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Kihel. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
How's it going, Matt?
Do you want us to call you Dave? Would that feel better?
Let me think about shaving my head.
All right. There's a filter for that.
There is. I think this is kind of doing it right now. So maybe that will work. But anyway, Dave has been delayed in his return, and he will be back, all things being equal, next week. So, but on to this week. Why don't we just crack on and take a look at what's on the cover of the North Coast Journal this week.
Yeah, this week we have a cover story from Cal Matters, the nonpartisan, nonprofit newsroom down in Sacramento dedicated to covering California politics and policy. And this week they came up with a story that our very own Cal Poly Humboldt is kind of smack dab in the middle of. So apparently a big controversy has erupted between the California State University system, the California Community College system, and to a lesser degree, the university system. But there is a dispute over whether a small community college,
Feather River.
Feather River, thank you, in Plumas County, Feather River Community College, should be allowed to start up a bachelor's fire management program, bachelor's degree program.
And they're not alone, are they? There are other community colleges that are considering this program as well. Is that correct?
Not necessarily this program, but there are 17 bachelor's degree programs being started by community colleges this year as a part of a program to get more bachelor's degree programs more widely available. And the rub is that those degree programs are not supposed to compete or conflict with any degree programs offered by any of the state universities. So Cal Poly Humboldt doesn't actually yet have a fire management program, but is starting one in the fall. And so the CSU system kind of objected to the community college system starting this program. And there's been, I guess, some back and forth between them. And now the state legislature has weighed in with a sternly worded letter. So we will see where that goes.
Some of the issue is, even if they do start this program, and apparently they will, is the distance involved for the students at Feather River. It's something like 270 miles, not really a practical commute for most people.
No, and so that was part of the back and forth. The CSU system was saying, well, why don't you do some kind of core courses along working towards this bachelor's degree, and then the students could transfer to Cal Poly Humboldt to finish out. And they're saying it's not really practical, both because of that distance, and then also the Feather River officials in Plumas County were saying we have been in an area of the state that's been decimated by wildfires in recent years, and so we don't want to train professionals to go off in other areas. We want to train people that live here and want to stay here and then want to work here. And to me, that was a kind of a very interesting piece of the story, or a piece of the controversy is, you have a California State University system that has seen declining enrollment and is trying to protect its programs and protect its enrollment numbers to essentially protect its universities and their funding. And at the same time, you have less interest of Californians of going to four-year universities and getting bachelor's degrees. And you have a greater, really acute need for kind of specialized training in certain sectors. And I think the most notable ones that are mentioned in the story are nursing and, wildland resources and fire management. to issues that are impacting many citizens in the state. And so from a statewide perspective, it seems like there would absolutely be a benefit toward increasing enrollment in these programs and increasing the number of programs, and thus the number of nurses coming into the workforce, and also the number of well-trained firefighters.
Great. Well, I'm glad that the Journal has this story in. It's a fascinating read, and I hope everybody takes a look at it. And any final thoughts on this before we move on to the next one?
No, just I hope there's a resolution that really works for the best interest of the entire state, and not just a fiefdom here or there. Okay.
Well, we also, another big story in the past week or so has been the police shooting that occurred, and the fallout from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, not as much information as we'd hoped. We're having kind of a hard time getting additional information and details from the agencies involved. But what we know is, there was a report of an armed robbery and assault at the Bayshore Mall last Tuesday, and a deputy responding to the area then kind of entered into a pursuit with a suspect vehicle that quickly reached really high speeds around Harris Street, and led to a crash at Dole Beer and Harris that kind of immobilized the suspect vehicle, and then also hit just a car containing a family going about their daily business. And according to the sheriff's office, the two suspects in the assault and armed robbery that after the collision exited their vehicle armed with rifles and pointed them at a deputy, may have fired one round at a deputy, and a total of 3 officers returned fire. We do not know how many shots officers fired. We do not know how many times the suspects were hit. We do know that they were both shot and remain in critical but stable condition at a local hospital. So there's kind of a lot of outstanding questions. We tried to get, as I said, answers to the number of shots fired and the number of times the suspects were hit, as well as the names of the officers involved in the incident. And to date, the sheriff's office and the Eureka Police Department. The Eureka Police Department is leading kind of a multi-agency investigation into the shooting. Both agencies have declined to release that information.
Also interesting to note that everybody's body cams appeared to have been off until after the incident was over. Is that a normal procedure, or is that something that happens a lot, or just
it happens
a coincidence?
It's unfortunately something that happens a lot more frequently than we'd like, than we in the media and we proponents of transparency would like, I should say. In the sheriff's office case, they have a really cumbersome body cam system. And so rather than having kind of standalone body cams that are affixed to their uniforms, they have essentially what's an app on their smartphones that they can employ to record interactions. But whereas, equipment that is designed to be a body cam and deployed for that purpose is very user-friendly, and that you can touch it once and it will start recording automatically. And most of them even have a fail-safe where if you fail to touch it, you can go back after the fact and at least extract video, if not video and audio of a situation. The sheriff's office, it doesn't have any of that stuff. And so in a, quickly, developing incident, it's not entirely surprising that a deputy may have, or multiple deputies may have failed to activate their body cams. And, in my mind, it's a good argument for, why the county should do what it can to fund a real body camera program that equips deputies with equipment that's really going to work in the field.
Okay, well, a busy news week, and we're moving on to another story out of Arcata.
Yeah, our new staff writer, Ollie Hancock, who we're very happy to have aboard. So shout out to Ollie.
Hey, Ollie.
Hey, Ollie.
Took on looking into some social media reports that have begun circling recently. kind of appearing to report this spate of drink spikings in Arcata or of attempted druggings. Most of there was a couple instances mentioned in Eureka as well, but most of them were focused at Arcata bars, and really contained reports of community members saying that they had been out and either tasted something funny in their drink in a couple of instances, or more often at some point in the evening began feeling really fuzzy and essentially unwell, unstable, and kind of a level of impairment beyond what they felt they had consumed alcohol-wise. And so we asked Ollie to look into this, and they contacted a bunch of folks from these community boards, contacted establishments, and then contacted the Arcata Police Department and North Coast Rape Crisis team. And I think one of the things that was really interesting to us in this reporting is North Coast Rape Crisis, which runs a 24-hour hotline to field reports of instances just like this, as well as rape and sexual assault. Amanda LeBlanc, the executive director there, was basically like, we haven't seen an increase in such reports, but we always receive such reports. We receive, on average, like 20 of them a month, which was kind of eye-opening to us that this is something that may be happening so prevalently in our bars and nighttime establishments up here.
And it feels like some of this or a lot of this goes underreported or unreported to the police. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So while Amanda said that from North Coast Rape Crisis perspective, Chief Brian Ahern at the Arcata Police Department said basically, like, we haven't received I don't remember the last time we received an official report or launched an official investigation into attempted druggings or drink spikings. He said that they track the social media posts, so they're kind of aware of the sentiment in the community, but really seems like these reports are not making it to law enforcement. And Amanda had, a number of kind of reasons for thinking that. Some people just aren't comfortable making reports to police. There's also a sentiment that because a lot of, at least according to the social media reports, these attempted druggings ended in some degree of safety, with these folks being escorted home by friends and stuff, that people didn't feel the impetus to then report it officially, or because they didn't know who had actually spiked their drink, didn't feel like they had a perpetrator to point to, didn't feel like they should come forward and report it. And so Amanda was really, forward, saying that, whether to report or not and what manner to report is up to the individual, of course. But she said, there's varying levels that these instances can be reported, whether it's, directly to police or by calling the North Coast Rape Crisis Hotline just to access services, counseling services, support services, or whether to make a quote unquote official report to North Coast Rape Crisis about exactly what transpired.
And I also noticed that some of the venues mentioned are giving testing options, or is that something that you think is prevalent, or?
Well, yeah. So I know Ollie spoke to the owner of or one of the owners of Arcata Theater Lounge, who said that they are looking into getting test strips. So if anybody is uncomfortable or has a question about their beverage, they can use those to test. And I think it was Richard's Goat Tavern also has test strips that are available upon request. I would say that Amanda was from North Coast Rape Crisis was very clear that, like, those aren't fail-safe, that they test for very specific date rape drugs. I think there's 3 of them, but the reports that they've been receiving of drink spiking run the gamut of different substances that are being put into people's drinks. And so, she was really saying, like, the best practice, Chief Ahern too, is, make sure, if you can, that you're not out drinking alone, that you have friends, other people out looking out for you, and that you can go to if you start experiencing some kind of symptoms. Never take a drink from somebody you don't know, never leave a drink unattended. And if you have left a drink unattended, stop drinking it, get a new drink. And I'd also just want to point out here that while Amanda was careful in kind of walking us through various preventative measures or protective measures that people can take to try to keep themselves and and the people immediately around them safe, she says, the ultimate onus is on the perpetrators in these things, that it's, she's
Right.
not going to scold somebody to cover their drink or to, not leave their drink. She's going to scold people to stop drugging drinks, which I think is the appropriate response to keep our eye on the ball here.
Absolutely. And good advice there as well. All right. Well, thank you very much for all of that. And I think maybe it's time to move on to Jennifer and the Arts and Features beat. Jen, what do you got for us?
Speaking of drinks, but a lot less horrible, the Oysterfest planning has moved to the point of discussing beer. Are you ready?
Ooh, yes.
I know. For the past few years, let's see, since I came on board to the Journal, there's been a lot of Oysterfest controversy. Every year there's a thing. And then there's the lead up to the Oysterfest, and then there's the after the Oysterfest kind of discussion groups that happen where everybody talks about what was good, bad, and different, etc. And we are gearing up for the same. But this year we are back to, last year was the first year we were back in person, right? We had a couple of virtual Oysterfests, which I just want to say, shout out to the Oysterfest people for really trying to make a virtual event, like a safe event, that I watched them and, enjoyed them and learned a lot about oysters and all kinds of stuff, including indigenous foodways. And I don't know, it was very cool.
Way better than SpongeBob.
I don't want to make the SpongeBob crowd angry, I don't need Krabby Patties thrown through my window. So, so I really admired what they did with a festival of this scale. They're, one of the few groups that did it during the pandemic. And last year we went back to in person on the Creamery adjacent field. And that was a big packed event. And one of the big complaints about that one, despite being back in person, was that the lines for beer were crazy long. They ran out of oysters, etc. There was a lot to be overcome on a very small budget. And again, there was some controversy attached to it. Previously, they've had some beer controversy pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the year where the Oysterfest organizers from Arcata Main Street wanted the beer cheaper than was practical for breweries. There was the year where they had all the beer on the plaza provided by Seaquake from Crescent City, so not in Humboldt County. There have been all kinds of dramas. So when they announced what beer they were going with or how they were doing beer this year, of course, we pay attention. And this year they have decided on Shuck It. Shuck It is a white label beer that is coming out of Mad River Brewery and, Mad River Brewing Company. And how it's going is when they say white label, this means that it's like a partnership thing. Like you go to a schmancy hotel and they have their own label of wine. Right. That's done with a partnership with a winery. And that winery might be selling that wine elsewhere with a different label, etc. So they're going to do the same thing with Shuck It, which will debut at the festival. It will be soft launching in taps around the county the week or two before, possibly, so keep your eye out. But Mad River Brewing Company did an interesting thing to talk about the beer itself. The beer itself is a step in the direction of what they're calling an indigenous ale style. So do you remember when beer was just beer? Now there's styles. You have to know them all. Indigenous ale is cool because not only is the Mad River Brewing Company owned by the Yurok tribe and therefore an indigenous company, and since that ownership took place, you can see their branding, their labels, their designs, everything, and of course their behind the scenes management is all indigenous. And then now they are taking it a step further by using some indigenous ingredients. So they are getting corn from another tribe in sort of it's called the Iowa tribe in Kansas and Nebraska. And they have an indigenous species of corn that they're using in the brew. And apparently it makes this light, what they call sessionable beer. This means you won't get hammock or schlemmer from the first beer.
Right. I think they call them all-day ales or something like that, where you can.
Lawnmower beers, etc.
There you
Yes.
go. Yeah.
So something you can kind of drink all day, which hopefully will cut down on what I like to call the plaza burn, when you are too drunk to reapply your sunblock or go inside and you get the plaza burn.
Right. And you'll still be able to safely pronounce the name of the beer. That's
true. The slurring really lends itself to the shh in the beginning. But so this, it's kind of a cool project that they're doing. So the only beer that's going to be on the plaza for Oyster Fest is going to be the Shuck It, which they also assure me, both the Jessica Karenko of Mad River Brewing Company and Gil Miracle, the event coordinator for Arcata Main Street, have assured me that the beer goes with oysters. It is light and refreshing and goes with oysters. So they're just going to have those taps. They're going to have, like, I want to say, was it 4 or 5 taps? And they'll have, a couple of brews, but all by Mad River Brewing Company. And Miracle's hope is that it will make things a little easier. It made it easier on Arcata Main Street, and, as he put it, streamlined the process of negotiating and making the deals for the beer, and also that it'll hopefully move lines faster because you'll be dealing with one beer company, not switching out taps and things like that. We'll see how it turns out.
And you'll be able to get one of those hats, that have the two beers on it.
Beer hat.
Yeah.
You know what, though? The beer hat will cost you. I mean,
but you won't have to decide what goes in the left one and what goes in the right one.
I didn't know that was
is what I hear you saying.
So, one of the things that they did in forming this partnership with Mad River Brewing Company is they kind of are helping. Mad River Brewing is helping with the PR, with the launch, with getting the word out. And so one big press release kind of went out to everybody announcing that this was the deal. But that means that they also did not speak to breweries individually. And I think there was some awkwardness around that. And I spoke to a couple of people who were like, yeah, this is kind of weird. And Andy Ardell of Humboldt Brews, now Humboldt Brews has the Humboldt Brewing Company, and they are making their own beers like the Red Nectar that everybody loves. And his feeling was like, that, Gil Miracle points out that, it's a woman-owned, indigenous, or woman-run, tribal-owned indigenous beer, who could be mad or whatever. But at the same time, Andy Ardell pointed out that for a lot of, especially small breweries, small local businesses, the visiting tourists who come to the Arcata Bay Oyster Festival, this is a chance to really put your wares in front of a new audience. And only having Mad River Brewing Company's beer kind of limits that. And as he was putting, people who are beer people, and beer people love a festival, they might come for the weekend and not, hit every brewery. But one of the things that's nice about a festival is that you can go and try lots of things.
Right. So what you're saying is there's still a little bit of drama sort of percolating in there.
Yeah, I'm not going to say drama, but I'm going to say that, nothing's ever going to go 100% smooth.
Right.
Not even a crisp, sessionable ale. I can kind of see that point, though, because, for a lot of people, for the bands, for the beer people, for the food people, the Oyster Festival is not necessarily a big money maker, right?
Right.
It takes a lot of money to get a spot on the plaza. If you're a food vendor, it takes a lot of money to enter the oyster contest. It takes a lot of money to get a spot on the plaza for your beer too. But
I think they call that a loss leader.
Yes. And it introduces new people to your product. And, it's a great way to say oh, yes, I had this when I went to the Oyster Fest. It's good. We should order it. Yeah. And you get new customers that way. So I can see, both points.
Point taken. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how, if this shortens lines, if this makes the festival go smoother. We'll be looking out for all that.
Great. Well, thanks for the reporting on that. And you got about 60 seconds to tell us about spotted owls.
Spotted owls, I have learned a couple of things about them. Number one.
Dish on the spotted owls.
Yes. Mark Larson apparently communed with them recently. He went on a Godwit Days tour, and he got to take some great pictures of the owls swooping down for, trigger warning for rodent lovers, a mouse. That is how the Green Diamond tour leaders are able to lure them out. And it's important for Green Diamond to know where there are spotted owls because they are a threatened species and they can't be cutting down their homes. So they go, they investigate, they see if they can get an owl to come out. And, that's kind of how they learn where they are. But it does involve luring a mouse or depositing a mouse on the end of a branch and waiting for an owl to swoop down and grab it with its talons. Circle of life. Not for everyone.
Avert eyes.
Yeah, avert your eyes. And there is some cross-species love happening between the bar owls and the spotted owls, which you'll have to read about.
I found that fascinating, but you're right. You will have to check it out.
Yes, it's 90 Day Fiance for birds.
It's not radio ready, folks. Well, great. Well, thanks for that. Thank you, Mark, for going out and checking out the spotted owls for us. I've never seen a spotted owl. I would really love to. Maybe
get a mouse and a camera.
Okay. All right. Well, that's about going to do it for this week's edition of North Coast Journal Preview. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is on newsstands now. Go out, get yourself a copy, pick up copies for friends, neighbors, and people you don't even know. Hand them out on the streets. Do us all a big favor. You can also get North Coast Journal online 24/7 at northcoastjournal.com. Thad and Jennifer, thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you again next week.